So, yeah, I'll just go ahead and get started with you're basically wanting to get my story of how Baba got involved with me and the context behind it, which is, to me, is pretty important. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start. Yeah, okay. I'll start with when I was 7. That's the first time that I remember having any kind of an experience, quote unquote, spiritual. And it was when I was 7, I had a dream that I was on top of this hill, and it was a really high hill, and you could see, looking out, it was like you could see the whole world. And I'm looking down, and I see myself on top of this hill, and I'm sitting there, just sitting there cross-legged, and I got a hat on, and it's hot, and there's flies bothering me, and I got to go to the bathroom, and I'm on that hill. I'm noticing myself on that hill, in that state, being quite miserable. But at the same time, I could see all around me, circling around me, surrounding me were these angels. And it was, and I'm like watching this going, don't, stop complaining. Don't you realize where you are? Look at this, And of course, then I woke up, and I remember even now thinking to myself, there's no way I'm telling anybody about this dream. They're going to think I'm nuts. Even at 7, it was like, no, I'm not telling this to anybody. So I forgot about the dream. Let's see, we fast forward, going to, I think I was in high school. Yeah, I was in high school. I must have been about 13, 12, 13. An incident happened where I was living in North Miami Beach at the time, and this was like 1967 kind of time. Lots of Haight-Ashbury kind of things going on. We had our local Haight-Ashbury, which was Grinnell's Park. And then they had theirs down in Coconut Grove, so the north end had it, the south end had it, where every Sunday, everybody would converge onto the park, and, all kinds of things are going on in the park, you can imagine, And so this was part of the game, and I think I was around 13, 14 maybe a little older, 14, maybe 15, actually. Anyway, so what happened was, one of the things that would happen every week was this guy named Holy Joe. And Holy Joe was this drunk guy who would get up on a stool and start preaching, God is love, but you're gonna burn in hell if you don't follow Jesus. You're done with. You're gonna, this. And he would do it. He was drunk. He was just, people would throw beer cans at him. This was a thing that would happen every week, So it's like part of the show. Well, one day I was out there and that was happening. I just said, this is dumb. And I noticed that, the corner of my eye, there was this little old Indian guy that maybe 5'2", with this, really ancient guy with a straggly beard, and he's walking along, and he's got his little circle of disciples, which are all Western, right? And they're beards and, beads and all this, and they're following, and they're going over somewhere. And I thought, well, that guy looks pretty, pretty cool, So I go down there and I start to listen to the guy, and I'm thinking he has a very sweet voice. He's talking like this. He's very soft and talking, and I'm going, oh, this is really cool, And then he keeps talking like this, and then he starts talking about Jesus and how if you don't follow Jesus, you're going to burn in hell. And when that happened, I got enraged. And so I literally walked the 3 miles home, absolutely enraged and fuming that, how dare this little sweet soul. I mean, it just drove me nuts. I was just absolutely enraged about it.
Did you have a religion that you grew up in?
Well, yeah, we grew up Reformed Judaism, which to me is like hardly anything, and that's a whole nother story. So anyway, so I go home, and I go to bed that night, and I woke up like 4 in the morning, and I look across my room, and it's dark in there, of course, and there's a being right in the corner of the room by the closet. And the being is so brilliant that I could not see who it was. Just the light was emanating. And I instinctively knew that if that being came any closer, I would literally be blown apart because of the power from this being. And at that instant, they came inside me. And I literally woke up, for real woke up. I was literally like that far off the bed. It was like an electric jolt had knocked me up into the air and back, and so I laid in that bed for an hour or so, just kind of in a daze. And I had a remembrance, that's all I can call it, of being at the Sermon on the Mount. And that Jesus had just left. So, he's already gone. And there was hundreds of people there, all like it was a picnic. It felt like a picnic, like a real gay, loving, happy, light feeling. And like, in our terms now, it would have been the Sahavas, being with Baba, just that atmosphere. Of course, then I didn't know anything about it, but that's what it felt like. So that incident happened, and of course I didn't tell anybody. And we ended up moving very soon after, long story short, we ended up moving from where I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, down to Miami, to North Miami Beach. And the very first friend that I had, this kid, I was sophomore? No. I was still in middle school. My first friend was a guy named Benji Lieberman. And Benji lived down the hall. We were in an apartment complex. And we became friends for a couple of years. He was the first friend I ever had. And he became poignant because he was my Baba contact a number of years later. So what happened was, after a couple of years, Benji moved away. He moved down to Coconut Grove, and we lost contact for a couple of years. And at that point, this is in high school, my last year in high school, somehow I got roped into going to a therapy session with my girlfriend and their family down in Coconut Grove. And as we were leaving, I was in my own car, I had this sudden urge, like, oh, Benji lives around here. I think I got to go see, I have to see Benji, I hadn't thought of him in a while. So I ended up finding where he lived, and I go over there. And that's the day that a guy named Paul Newman, who was a Baba lover, had come to see Benji for the first time and was telling about the 69 Darshan. And this is 1971. No, this is 1970, in the fall of 1970. And he was showing Benji these Baba cards and these pamphlets, and he was telling him about the 69 Darshan. And I'm hearing all this, and they give me cards and stuff. I'm going, oh, this is interesting, And I took it home, put it in my drawer. Didn't think about it a whole lot. However, I must have been thinking about, oh gosh, I forgot. Oh, really important one came up. I also had a friend in senior high school, and her brother actually lived in the ashram for a guy named Sharan Singh, who was Kirpal Singh's brother in India, who had met Baba, which I didn't know about at the time. I just knew that he was, and I was over there one day, and she goes, "Hey, would you like some prasad?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what is it?" And she went through this. "Oh, well, it's a gift from the master. My brother sent it to me from India." And like, "Oh, okay, So I popped it in my mouth. It was a piece of candy. And I popped it in my mouth, and for 20 minutes I sat there and sobbed. It just, all this stuff just happened. It just, and I have no idea what's going on. I was like, where's this coming from? It's not what I expected. But I knew something was up. I just like, wow, something's going on here. And at the same time, I don't have the dates exactly right, but what happened was a week after I graduated from high school, I ended up moving into this quote-unquote house, this commune down in Brickell Avenue where Benji was living. It was like a 5-bedroom house and 10 people were living in it. 8 of them were Baba lovers. 7 or 8 of them were Baba lovers. And in addition to that, next door, David Katz, David, and there was somebody else in there, I think Paul Newman, shared that house. So it was this big enclave, and a week after I graduated, I moved into and shared a room with Benji. And so I think I don't know how long I'd been there, or I don't have it straight what the thing is. But anyway, what happened was when I had that prasad, it's like, well, maybe this was before I actually moved in to Benji. So I said, well, maybe I'll send him a letter and ask him what he thinks of Baba, So I did. I sent Sharan Singh a letter, and I don't know, a few weeks later, I get a letter back, and he basically said, well, that's up to you to find out. Something like that. God, I wish I still had that letter. So I ended up moving in, and it was really interesting because when I came there, the feeling in the house was as if I walked into my family house and the love was there that I never had in my own house. That was an amazing feeling. Nobody had said anything, but just that's what it was. So I'm sharing this room with Benji, and now Benji had the layout we had was he had his bed over here. Then right here in between the beds, there was this like 6 by 6 foot painting that Lynn Ott had done. I mean, this humongous painting. And a big table with a record player and stuff. And then my bed was over here. My head is over here. There's a painting behind me and up here somewhere, And so for a couple of weeks, for about 2 weeks, I was reading the discourses and the everything and the nothing every evening before I went to bed. And, I'm reading this stuff and it's just ringing bells. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing stuff. That had happened to me a couple of years before. Somebody had given me some material from Inayat Khan, and I was reading his material at Grinnell's Park one day. And I literally was transported into another state. I mean, I was hearing bells and just like completely blissed out. Just, when I started reading this, so that's background too. So anyway, so I'm reading this stuff, and every night I'd be reading this and going, God, this is amazing. Oh my God. But the guy says he's God. He's a nutcase. What is he, crazy? He's an ego guy, or just so I had this thing going on, because on one hand, I'm getting blown away by what I'm reading. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like, and on the other hand, I'm going, this guy's bonkers. He's nuts. I'm keeping it clean. And finally, after a couple of weeks, one evening I read it and I'm just going, if he really is who he says he is, that's it. The search is over. And then, of course, my brain goes, Search? What search are you talking about? What are you talking about? So, I closed the book and I fell asleep. And that night, again, like 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up just in time. Like if this is my head here and you're the foot of the bed. It's a big water bed, by the way. It's a huge water bed. I wake up just in time to see that 6-foot painting standing on its own, starting to come down toward me. And Baba's face in the painting was coming down, hit me right on the nose, right on the face. And I had just enough time to go, thinking it was going to be really heavy and it's going to oh my God, it's going to hurt. It was like feather, And I picked it up, put it over to the side, and just kind of totally stunned. And I went outside into the living room and just kind of, what are you going to do with that, I decided, well, maybe I need to go over to the bay. We were a block away from the bay. So I'm going to run in and go get my cigarettes and then go out to the bay because I'm not going back to sleep. This is, And I go into the room and I've never felt this before, and I don't think I've ever felt it since to this extent. The energy in the room was so intense that I literally grabbed cigarettes and ran the heck out of that room. It was just repelling me. It was just so strong. He was like, you will not stay here. It was just, and I went and sat at the bay and sat there and wept for a couple of hours, And really it came down to, it was like, well, you needed an answer. What else can I do? And I think of these things and go, I must have a very thick skull. I need to have all the lights in the show and stuff to kind of get me. But, it really is. It was a matter of a multi-step process to give me the gift of commitment. So this was part of it. So that changed things. And I think it was a week or so later that Bill Stevens, who was Roger Stevens' father, was doing a talk on Baba at the University of Miami and decided to go to it. And I'm sitting in the back, way in the back, and there must have been at least 300 people there. At least that's my memory of it. The room was filled. And, Bill's yakking about all this stuff. And he gets to this point where he's talking about how when Baba came to the States for the first time in 1931, when he came off the boat, he was the first one to come off the boat. I don't know about the first passenger, but he was leading his group. So he was coming down the gangplank. And he came down the gangplank, took a right, and there were 3 people waiting for him at the end of the gangplank, Darwin Shaw, and I don't remember the other 2. But one of them was a lady. And what Bill said, was Baba, did his Baba, whatever he does. But then when he got to the lady, the first thing he did with her, he goes, do you remember the dream you had? And she was shocked because she hadn't told anybody. And she goes, yes, Baba. And he goes, that was me. What's so shocking about it is that Bill described the dream. And it was exactly the same dream I had when I was 15 years old with the whole episode of the body coming into me and all that. That got my attention. Just a little bit. That was a jaw dropper, Holy cow, it's like, this is getting really, interesting. So that was another gift. That was like saying, I'm with you. I've always been with you. And like, who is this guy? So that was the second of an instance that happened with dreams. I had the story with Baba in my early days with Baba, this lifetime, has been filled with a lot of dreams that always came when needed, when actually there was a crucial time. So a couple of years, couple of years go by, I guess, and I'm still living in Miami, and I don't remember which place was which, but I was living in Coconut Grove somewhere, and I remember we were talking to some people, and I've been involved with Baba maybe for a couple of years, and somebody was talking about a dream they had, and I just thought, just whimsically, just as a whim, gee, wouldn't it be nice if Baba gave me another dream? It's been a long time. That'd be really nice, Like, yeah, right. One of those, right? And sure enough, that night I had this dream. It wasn't Baba in his form now, but it was very powerful. And what happened was that the dream takes place. The opening scene is in a desert, and it's dusk, and the sky is purple. From it's very vivid out in the desert. It's just amazing. How vivid the colors are. So it's at late dusk and the sky is purplish, and we're on a very hard packed, cracked ground. And off to the side there's these cliffs that are at least 200-300 feet high, and there are caves in these cliffs, about like a third of the way up or halfway up those cliffs. And the scene shifts and I'm inside one of the caves. And in the cave there's like 12 of us, maybe more, but I always think of it as maybe there was about 12 people. And we were all around this wooden table that almost filled up the whole cave. It was a very large table. And we were all sitting down for dinner. And I'm like the ninth one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 11, that kind of thing. And the master is over at number 1. And he's going to each person, he's behind each one. So we're all sitting, and he's standing, going around and feeding us, giving us food, on the plate. And every single one, he would do some little, some kind of intimate thing for that person. And he's coming around, I'm just kind of looking at the bowl, and watching him looking at the bowl. And he comes around, he's behind me, and I look up like this, and I look into his eyes, and it's just this incredible blissful feeling, and like looking at the ocean, like the starry ocean, when I looked into his eyes. And he was wearing a simple like sadra, And I always thought of it as being maybe during Muhammad's time, because it just felt like that. I don't know. Then I woke up and I was like, wow, he really does that. If you just ask, wow, that's really amazing. So that was pretty interesting. I had about sometime in that period, I ended up moving to a friend's house named Ronnie Long down in South Miami. He's a Baba lover. David lived there also, and had a bedroom. And I was going through a particularly rough time at that, and I was really upset about something. A lady, of course, right? I was really upset about something to the point where I was actually having thoughts of suicide. Of course, I knew it was like, come on, you're not going to, but I was that upset, And I went to bed and I had this dream that was like so Baba. So I'll go there. It took place, and it's like a whole storyline. It's like I had a whole life. An open scene is I had this toddy shop, and it was like the early 1900s. I'm placing it, and I had this toddy shop, and I was the owner, and it was a very busy place. But what happened was I started developing this weird growth on my feet. We look, now it was like, I think it was leprosy, but at the time in the dream, you don't know. You just don't know what it is, but things started growing. And at some point, somebody said, oh, you must go see this guru. He heals people, this and that. I went, oh, okay, So I go there, and it's this indoors, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people, in this big circle, and there's a place in the middle there, right, where the person. And it turns out this guru is this really young-looking British lieutenant, with rosy cheeks. It's like, what's going on here, But he starts talking about world peace and this and that, and I'm like, okay, whatever. All of a sudden, everybody stops and bows down to this guy. And I'm going, I'm not going to bow down to this guy. He's not God. I'm not going to do that. And I black out. And I wake up and my feet are healed. And I felt okay because, like, you know what? I didn't bow down to the guy. No false stuff. But look what happened. It's like, okay, thank you, God. And I went on my way. And so that lasted for a while. I'm not sure how long, but all of a sudden it came back. The leprosy, and it came back with a vengeance. And I knew then that the end is near. I just knew it. And the scene immediately shifted. I'm on a raised platform. I'm on a raised wall, like a brick wall about that high, about 3 feet high, brick. And there's a bunch of us, and we're all in rags. We're all dirty and this and that. And I'm like maybe the 8th person down the line or something. And there's this man down at the end, all covered, and he has helpers, and he's washing each person's feet individually, and then giving them a coin, putting, what he's doing is he's washing their feet and then bowing down, and then going to the next person and doing that. And I'm watching this as it happens. And he gets to right before me. He's right at the person before me. And I'm watching this man. I can't see him because of all the clothes, all the stuff he's got on. But I was completely infused, completely overwhelmed with bliss. And I knew that I was going to die. But I also know instinctively, intuitively, that it absolutely did not matter because of this man. And that's how it felt. And then, of course, I woke up and I went, oh my God, thank you, Baba. Now I look back and go, it had to have been Baba, But I never saw his face. I just saw the clothes. So that was pretty powerful. And again, all these, you string them together, they're like tools to just bring that commitment in there. It's like, who could it be? Who else? Okay, so next step. 1975, I ended up going to India. I did a round the world tour, took 5 months off, had a backpack and a duffel bag, and went west from Miami, just kept going. And I planned it where I went to, there was only one night through the whole time I was gone that I didn't stay at a Baba lover's place. It was really neat. I flew from Miami, I went to San Francisco, stayed at some friends, Jay Moeller's house actually in Berkeley. Visited some Sufis, got to meet Murshida, which was really cool. And that's a funny story. I said, Murshida, can I take the candidates class? And he goes, well, dear, when you get done with school, we can talk about it, And of course, my joke was, well, I just retired from college, teaching college this past December. That was 1975, so what are we talking about, 2001 Christmas? Like 50-something years later. So my joke was I never got done with school. It's like never going to happen, Stayed up at George Cole's place up in Olympia, came down to LA. A couple of folks down there, flew out west to Hawaii, flew to New Zealand, stayed there. Oh yeah, I stayed at my brother's. He's not a Baba lover, but I stayed there. Stayed down in Christchurch with Anthony Thorpe, who was a Baba lover back then, for a week or so. I can't remember exactly how long. Flew to Sydney, hung out with Bill LePage for a week or so. And then flew to Delhi and to to Myrtle Beach, Maribon. Yeah, stayed at Villa. You know, stayed there I was planning on staying for 2 months, and I stayed a month. Oh yeah. Oh, I gotta tell that story. Okay. Oh my God. So went to India for the first time. I was 20. I was not yet 21. You know, 2 incidences I'll mention. Well, it was more than. That was quite a trip. I was there for a month. And well, I'll do that one first. We went out to Marizod one day, and on the way from Villa, we stopped at the Trust, and I'm talking to Monty, and she's looking at me. She goes, "Where's your hat?" I go, "I don't have a hat." She goes, "You gotta have a hat. You know, the sun here, it's more powerful here than anywhere in the world. You're gonna get sunstruck. You have to have a hat." Oh, okay, you know, what do I know? She goes, "Here, use Dr. Donkin's hat." Woo! So I should have kept that thing. I didn't, I gave it back. Anyway, so I take Donkin's hat, we go out to Maribod, and back in those days, we stayed all day. We were there from like, I don't know, it was like 10 in the morning until 6. And we'd have lunch out there. And most of the Mandali were still around. Anyway, so at lunchtime, I decided I'm going to walk up to Seclusion Hill. I've never been there, you know. So I take a stick and boogie on up to Seclusion Hill. And I'm sitting up there, and it's kind of hot. Actually, it's really hot. And I'm wearing the hat, and the flies are bugging me. And, you know, I got to pee, and I'm feeling miserable. And yes, and then it comes back to me, you know, it was like a freight train. It's like Baba opened up the skies and said, "Remember me." You know, it was just like, it just hit me like like a train. That was it. That was the spot. That was the thing. And it was absolutely stunning. I mean, I was knocked over. I did manage to go back down, and Erich took one look at me as I came back in and says, "What's wrong with you, brother?" And I told him the story. He said, "Oh, you know, Baba, you know, this and that and whatever." But that was really such a key for me as far as locking that commitment. And I mean, it was like, you have no idea how much Baba really takes care of us, whether we have a clue or not. Where, you know, it's not even up to us, you know, at all. 'Cause, you know, so that was pretty important. That was a pretty important experience. Another one there was, oh boy. During my travels, over those period of months on the road, I was thinking about a particular lady that I'd known. And I was a respiratory therapist in the hospital, and we had a department, and we were like family. So, it was like very cohesive. And there was one person that I really liked a lot. Oh, yes, okay, I got to fill in the blank a little bit. The day before I left on my trip, there was another person in our department, this lady. There was all kinds of stories going on. She had an affair with our department head, and it was really nasty. And anyway, her name was Wanda, and Wanda and I had always gotten along, And a couple of weeks before I left, she invited me to go down with her downtown Miami to go on an errand. She was going to help somebody down there. I said, okay, yeah, sure, And we go in there, and it's a paraplegic guy. And what she'd been doing, nobody knew anything about this. She'd been going down there and helping this guy out on a regular basis. I mean, a lot of work. And I was absolutely stunned. I mean, this lady was like angelic, and she was just quiet, but had no idea, about this. The side of her. None of us knew, So that was pretty amazing. But anyway, I think it was the day before I left, I invited her to come up to where I was living. I was living with my parents. I had all these Baba books and all this stuff in the closet. Nobody's going to use it. Maybe you'd want to take a look at some of the stuff. And, she didn't know anything about Baba. She goes, yeah, okay. So she came over, and I don't think she even took anything, but I just showed her the stuff. And she had a very Christian Southern background. She was from Atlanta, and just that real conservative, but in a nice way. She had such a loving heart. It was really amazing. So anyway, I leave, and during the trip, I had been thinking about her a lot. Not her, somebody else in her department. And when I was finally in India, after a few months of traveling, I was actually staying out at Lower Mehrabad at the time. This is before the MPC. I was staying in Dr. Donkin's room for a week, I think. And I started having all these images of this lady drowning, car going into a lake and drowning and all this horrible stuff. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? I'm down the hall, I'm down the hill from the Samadhi. What the heck is all this stuff, A couple days later, a runner comes out from the trust and says, you have an emergency phone call from Miami. You need to come back into town and get it. No cell phones. So I go in down to the trust, and they make the arrangements. It's going to take 6 hours to get the call through. I go back, finally get the call, and it's one of our people in our department, and says, you have to come home now. So-and-so, and she told me the whole story. It was exactly the way I had the image. But it wasn't who I thought it was. It was Wanda. Okay? And something just took hold and said, I have to go back. That she was pleading with me to come back. You have to come back. We need your support. And I'm like, what do the emotional support. Huh? I'll tell you in a minute. It's part of the story. It's very dramatic and very Baba. So what happened was we made the plans. I had a ticket where it was an around the world ticket, so I had priorities. And I was able to book a flight immediately out of Bombay. We took I think I left the next day and back to Bombay and got a flight to London and London to Miami direct. And so what happened was I get picked up at the airport by Robbie, one of the guys in the department. We go directly to the hospital. And I'm wearing an army coat. I haven't slept in 2 days. I'm stinky. On the way out, I had stopped in Pune and gotten a photograph to take home for her, and brought it with me. So we go directly to the hospital, and by now she's been in intensive care in a coma, brain dead for almost 2 weeks. And there's a whole very dramatic story to this. And so I go in there, I'm alone with her, she's in the bed, she's totally gone, and I just whispered to her, don't worry about anything, Baba loves you, and everything's going to be fine, just give it to Baba, just give it to God, you're going to be great, it's going to be fine, and hung the picture over the TV, And then walked out, and started talking to the nurses in the nurses station. I hadn't seen him in 4 months. And I was like, "Hey, you guys doing?" A couple minutes later, one of the nurses comes out, like absolutely shocked. She goes, "What did you do? What did you say?" I said, "What?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "She has been so restless this whole time. I don't know what happened, but she is absolutely at peace right now. I'm like, wow, that's great, you know. And I went home. What had happened was her mother came down from Atlanta and would not allow them to turn the ventilator off. At that point, that's what the laws were. So she was brain dead for quite a while, and the pseudomonas was growing in her air pipe. It was just nasty. But her mother would not allow them to disconnect. She allowed them to do it that night. So she heard Baba's name. She might have seen Baba's photo. I don't know. And that was it. So that was pretty, and that in itself was really dramatic. What had happened during that period of time, and I didn't had any idea that this happened, that Wanda had contacted my parents when I was gone and arranged it. She was going on vacation. She arranged it. She was going to go to London, and she arranged it to make sure that she was on the same flight sitting next to me, or at least the same flight, coming back from London with me to Miami. She had set that whole thing up, and I had no clue. Nobody had said anything about it at all. But she had some connection there, with Baba, and that was pretty amazing. So, that was pretty powerful. Those kind of things tend to cement, that conviction. And then, of course, I suffered because I had just come back, literally living in Lower Maribod, and then get thrown into Western Miami civilization. I cried. It was just, the shock was, talking about culture shock. So that was pretty intense. That was the Baba story of how he kind of netted me into his fold, so to speak. That was the dramatic stuff.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that painting that fell on me, there's a addendum there. So Benji decided, I guess a year or so later, Benji decides he's not into Baba anymore. He's got a side story. He actually went to the first time he went to the center, he fell asleep overnight in the lagoon cabin. Whatever, that was great. But anyway, so Benji decided he's not into Baba anymore, so he gave the painting back to Lynn. And I guess that was probably around 77, 78. No, it had to have been earlier than that. Probably around 75, I'm going to guess. Maybe 74. Okay, so anyway. That's a great story too. Okay. During that time, from 76, 77 period when I came back from India, I was looking for something to do. I mean, I didn't want to be a respiratory therapist forever. And after working in a hospital, I sure as heck didn't want to work in the medical. It's just like, it's got to be something better than this. This is like, I am not going to kill myself for this, school and money. And it's like, this is like, it's got to be something better. So I started searching, Ayurvedic, Chinese. I had this fancy, I was going to go to China to become a barefoot doctor. It's like, that would have been interesting. Nice Jewish boy from Miami, Yeah, you never know. Anyhow, so at one point I came to the center, and I think it was 1976, and they put me in the upper room at the center. And in that room, I shared it with a guy named Brad Mendel. And Brad, at the time, was a student at Palmer College up in Davenport, which is a chiropractic college. And we started talking, and it was all neurology. We spent days talking neurology, and I am absolutely inspired, just like blown away. And so I go through this process. I was going to go to Palmer. Anyway, I end up in Atlanta, at the school in Atlanta the following year. And that first week, we had doubled the population of the school. It went from 150 to 300 overnight because we had a class of 150. And the room that they had us all in, there was only enough chairs for half of us. So half of us were sitting on the ground. And that first week, and I remember calling my parents Wednesday night going, I don't know if I made the right decision or not. I mean, half of us are still sitting on the ground here. This is like pretty funky, Yeah. So I'm not so sure about this. Now, gotta remember, I just came back from working at a multi-million-dollar catheterization lab at Mount Sinai Hospital. And, this kind of thing is like really tacky, So I'm wondering about this, and I decided to go to a Baba meeting downtown Atlanta that Friday, and I go down there for the first time, and I walk into the room. I open the door. In Atlanta, they had a Baba Center at the time in Little Five Points. Tom Phillips used to run it. I don't know if remember Tom, a long time ago. Anyway, I open the door, I walk in, and the very first thing I see is that painting hanging up front and center up on the wall. And it was like Bob was saying, yeah, you're in the right place. Okay, we're done, we're good. Rest is history. That's that's the story, that aftershot of the painting. I don't know where it is now. I would love to know where that painting is now. Probably couldn't afford it, but I would love to be able to get it. So for you in the films, it's a painting of Baba, head in the middle, and the universe is around him. And it's dark blue and purplish, and okay. You never know. I might get a phone call. Another offshoot story to that's very funny how Baba works is I told you how, I met Brad in the upper room. Well, it turns out what happened was that it happened to Brad the same way he learned about chiropractic. He was in the upper room a few years before that, 2 or 3 years before that, and they had put him in a room with Bruce Hedendahl, who was going to school, and it was the same story, and turned on Brad to it, right? It was like, really? Not only that, but when I got out of school, God, it must have been maybe a month before I graduated, I get a call from Kitty. Oh, do you know Bruce Hedendahl? No. Well, you should call him up and tell him you want to work for him. I'm like, okay. Like, are you kidding me? So I called Bruce up. He's up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, And I go, Bruce, I'm calling because Kitty called me and thought I should work for you. What do you think? He says, can you come up? It's all it needed was, Kitty's endorsement. That was it. Another part of that coincidence, after working with Bruce for a while, I moved back down to South Carolina and taking the state board in South Carolina. And it turns out there's a guy named with Bobby Gordino right before the boards. Turns out that Bobby's really close friends with Bruce. And we get along famously on the phone, right? So we set it up where Bobby and I share a room at the hotel in Columbia to take the state board. And it was a godsend because Bobby was an amazing spirit. And I needed that, right? I had the smarts. I was a very brilliant guy intellectually for all this stuff that we had to learn for the boards, pretty fresh with it. And Bobby didn't have a frickin' clue. No way. There's not a snowball's chance in hell he would have ever passed that board without me being there. Just like I never would have passed the board if he wasn't there. I needed his spirit to be able to get through that thing, honestly, because I would have looked like a deer in the headlights if I didn't have that spirit from Bobby. and it was just as important. So Baba put us together like that and got us both through. So you have all these little connections, really interesting. There was one time at the Samadhi, which is real funny. Rosalie and I were chatting the other day, remembered it. I had just been in the Samadhi and I got out, it was in the morning, after the prayers. And I guess you could call I had Marabad mush, the brain just, just kind of, I was staring down toward the MPC, toward the lower Marabad, but really not thinking, just kind of blank. And all of a sudden, this ring of fire emanated out from the Samadhi. And all I saw was just, from back of it, just going, out toward the world, like maybe 4 feet high, and just like a wave, this wave of fire. And I said, I didn't see it come out of the Samadhi, but you could tell that's where it came from, And I'm like, was that real? Or was I just imagining that? As soon as I thought that, Ted Johnson started singing, "Welcome to my world." And I'm going, okay. I got it. Yeah. I actually, you just reminded of another quick little dream that I had one time a few years ago. I'm not sure what to make of it, but my wife Robin just mentioned something. Right after I woke up, she mentioned something about Mara, being in Marazad with Mara, and being in the house, Baba's house, and all this stuff. And I literally had just woken up from this dream where it felt like I was a servant, and I was looking up, and somebody was going up the stairs. And I can't remember if it was Mara or somebody. It was one of the women mandali of the household in there. But I was like just being a witness to it. Like, well, what was I being a witness? How is it that I was there? Well, maybe I was one of the servants or something. But just, it just felt like being witness to something, It's like, whoa. Now I forgot the detail, but it was like as soon as I woke up, she said something about it, like out of the blue. And it was like, how did that happen? That's so cool. Yeah. When my wife and I, we started living together in 1981, and we got married in 1983. We went to India together in 1980. Yeah, we hadn't even gotten married yet. We were living together. We hadn't gotten married yet. We went to India together, and Mara was just doting over Robin at the time. The way she said that Mara was just like this. And I've got a photo of them like that far apart, and Mara's looking into Robin's eyes and holding her face like this. It's just like, oh my God. And she said, she kept going to her, going, have a baby soon, have a baby soon. We're thinking to ourselves, wait, you got to finish grad school, we got to get married, yada, yada. Maybe a couple years. We got back, she was pregnant, we had this kid, the following November. So it was like, pretty amazing. Yeah. So whenever our oldest, this is our oldest kid. We got married, and then she got pregnant very quickly. And whenever he was being a complete, really nasty, remember, he's Mara's gift. Believe it or not, that kept perspective. There was a period, gosh, early on, like 71, 72, I would leave the hospital in Miami at 11 o'clock and drive all night and come over here for like a 3-day weekend. It was 12 hours overnight and 15 going back because of the traffic. but I had a VW Superbug. And anyway, I drove up here and I was leaving. As I was leaving, I was just getting near Pine Lodge, and Fred Winterfield comes flying out of the Pine Lodge, just roly-poly Fred, just really going at, and he gets in front of my car and stop, like that, and like leaning on my car, and I'm like, whoa. And he comes up to the window and he gives me a Baba photo and said, this was touched by Baba. And he knew exactly where these photos were going, who they were going to. That was the first time I actually felt the personal touch of Baba like that. Wow. So I had that photo and still have it. And actually, that was in 71, 72. 1992, I had flown out from Cape Cod out to St. Louis, going to talk to that school about getting a job there. And I stayed with Cynthia Shepard. And Cynthia and I talked back and forth, And at one point, I got this really strong urge to give her the photo. I take it everywhere I travel. I always take that photo with me. And I felt just this incredibly strong urge to give her the photo. And I'm kind of wrestling inside saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's my photo. And this voice says, if you're not willing to give it to somebody, then it's not worth you having it. That kind of, So I gave it to her. And I come home. And Robin's like, you gave your Baba photo, oh my God, what did you do, you dummy, blah, 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 blah. And I felt like, oh shit, what did I do that for? So I was getting real restless about this, and it wouldn't stop. And I was just like, oh God, what did I do, And finally, I think I talked to Jane Haynes about it. I think it was Jane, and she pulled out an album, and she had all these photos, and a lot of them were touched by Baba. So I'm like, whoa, it's like, what can I do? Like, how can I get that thing back? I can't ask her for it back. I mean, who does that, So it's like, maybe we can find another photo, or something like, to make it easier so I can get it back, And I had dropped her hints, It's like, oh, how you doing? How's the photo? Hoping she'd say something, She never would, So Jane and I are looking through the thing, and she finds two of them that are touched by Baba. That's it. Let's give her 2 for 1. And I think we sent her the photos, and she was like, okay, gave me the photo back. She's really happy with the photos. It worked out brilliantly. But it was like, oh, God. So I still have the photo. I'm not, that was a lesson. But it was interesting because it was like, really, if you're not willing to, in the same spirit, if you're not willing to give when you get that prompting, something inside of you really tells you need to do something. You have to do it, no matter how hard it is. And that was the test. It was like, I don't want to give this away, but it was like, really? It's not worth anything then. And it's like, oh shit, Yeah. The question is how my parents relate to Baba. Is that okay? So, I got involved in Baba in like 71. I was 18. And at some point that year, my mother, this is Reform Judaism, living in Miami, very Reform. And she goes, so who's this Baba guy? What is this Baba thing, that you're involved in, And I said, well, it's kind of like, like Jesus, was. And she looks at me and she goes, well, we don't believe in Jesus. And I went, okay, well, never mind, forget it. And I walked away going, there goes that conversation. And it never got brought up again for a while. That was 1971. Fast forward to 1981, and or 80 actually, and I'm here in Myrtle Beach, 81 maybe, in Myrtle Beach, and Robin and I are hanging out together on and off, and my parents decided to come up to visit, and they end up staying on the center for a week, which is kind of interesting because they don't nothing about Baba, but they end up staying on the center for a week. And side note, my mother meets Robin and looks at me and goes, "She's the one." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" We're friends. Anyway, so they end up meeting Kitty. And they have about an hour-long conversation with Kitty. And I'm there like a fly on the wall watching this conversation. And I'm very worried about how this conversation is going to go because I've known Kitty for 10 years and it's always a certain kind of relationships wrapped around Baba and that's all you know. So I'm going, where is this thing going to go? Because they got nothing to do with Baba. It's So they're sitting there talking to her and it's all about sailing, fishing, golfing, shopping. Lots of shopping for shoes, shopping for this, shopping for that, more sailing, more golfing, totally mundane. This is absolutely, and that's it. And I'm watching Kitty and I'm absolutely stunned at how natural and with them that she is with them. I mean, totally, not a put on. This is Kitty just being, your best friend kind of thing. And I walked out of there stunned. I was amazed what a lesson that was in being able to be with somebody, really being with somebody. So, that was nice. That was wonderful meeting her, that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm like, my head's spinning, So years and years and years go by. 2008, my mother is dying in Kansas City. Really, nothing's been mentioned that whole time about Baba so much. I don't remember anything notable, So 2008, we're in her room. She's in a coma. I'm sitting next to her by her bedside. My big brother and father are off to the side somewhere, not very far away. It's in the afternoon. Well, the night before that, actually, what happened was I was in the room. It was dark. The TV was on, and I'm talking to Robin on the phone, and she goes, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, my mom's in the hospital bed. She's out, And she goes, "Well, why don't you do something, Baba-wise?" And she says, "What's that noise I hear?" I said, "It's the TV." She says, "Why don't you turn the TV off and just, I said, "Yeah, you're right." So I turn the TV off and I play the Sufi 30-minute Baba, saying Baba's name for 30 minutes. I have it on recording. I have it on my phone. Yeah, the choir singing Baba's name for 30 minutes. And then 15 minutes you see Baba and they're singing these really beautiful songs. So I played it, on the thing, she's out. So because Robin's gone, "I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks like this. I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks." I said, "Well, whatever, I don't know." Next day, I'm sitting in her, next to her bed during the day. And she's out. She's in a coma. And I'm sitting next to her. And all of a sudden, she kind of bolts up like this, eyes open, I think, I remember. Baba, 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 Baba. I'm like, "Did you guys see that?" And they're going, "See what?" I'm like, unbelievable. I'm the only one that saw it. But it was absolutely, and she died the next morning when nobody was around. So it's like, Bob's got her. So that was my mother. Fast forward till 2014. My dad now is like 90 years old. He's got somebody coming in to help him. He's old and, elderly and weak, fragile. Anyway, I'm visit there. I would go every 6 months. I'd go visit him, and one day I'm showing him on the phone. I'm showing him these photos of Robin and me and the kids and this and that. And I have a photo of that photo of Mara looking into Robin's eyes. It's a really intimate photo. And he goes, "Oh, I remember her. We met her back in Myrtle Beach." And I went, "No, actually, Dad, that's Mara. You met Kitty." He goes, "Oh, but they had the same vibe." Oh my God, nothing had been said for 40 years, right? And all of a sudden that, and it's like, wow, Baba's really got this whole thing happening. So the following year, New Year's Eve, I get the call, "You got to come to Kansas City. He's dying." And I come up there, and he dies New Year's Eve, and they take the body over to the same funeral home we had my mom, and I go over there the following Monday to take care of business. And the guy goes, "Do you want to see the body? Do you want to see his body?" And I went, "Not really. I don't want to do that." And he goes, "Okay." So I leave, I get in the car, I start driving down the road. I've gone maybe 50 yards, and this presence comes into my being and says, "You have to go back there right now." And I'm like, "Ah!" Stop at the gas station, turn around, go back into the place. And I tell the guy, "I think you're going to think I'm nuts, but yeah, I think I do want to see." He said, "Okay." So they got him on the gurney, all wrapped up, and I just had the feeling it's like, I was going to unwrap and see his head, and they said, "No." I was like going, "No, remember him as he was alive, not with this dead corpse." But something I always thought was important was to have the Master's Prayer, the Prayer of Repentance, and the Beloved God prayer somehow involved. And of course, nobody I'm the only one in the family remotely involved. But I just kind of like, now's my chance, And I call my brother up. He's in Scotland, and I call him up and says, "I'm going to do these prayers for just a few minutes. Do you want to participate?" On the phone. He's like, "No." It's like, okay, So I did the prayers over his body, and I heard, very distinctly, "Thank you." I had a guy come into the office one day, the chiropractic office. And this is up in Massachusetts, up in Gloucester. And this guy was like 6'7", 6'8", huge guy. And he was, he talked like this, and he was a very, it's kind of Italian, and he talked, "Hey, Doc, how are you?" He was a very, real gentle guy, Ran the Dunkin' Donuts store down the street. And every time he came in, you could smell him coming in. You knew he was there because the smell of the donuts. And a lot of times he would bring in donuts, like bring in a dozen donuts for all the staff, So he's just like this, and he's been coming in a while, and One morning he comes in and he goes into the main room, and I had a Baba photo of him leaning on a tree at the center, right? And he looks at it and goes, "Hey, Doc. Who is that? Is that like Jesus with a mustache or something?"
Yeah.
I looked at her and said, "Frank, you are so on it." Avatar Mir Baba Ki Jai. Or as my son said when he was 5, Avatar Meher Baba PJ.